Hi everyone in English 1301, it's Dr. E and I'm here to provide you with a video that kind of runs through information about MLA guidelines. We have read some things in our course text about plagiarizing, avoiding plagiarizing, using quotation marks, that kind of thing. I want you to also note that there are lots of resources in our course text that deal with specifically MLA formatting when it comes to quotations or citations. I'm going to walk through a little bit of that here, and I'm going to rely on the Purdue Online Writing Lab website, which is something that's linked on D2L that I go back to time and time again. That website is the reason I don't ask y'all to buy a separate MLA book, because everything is available on the website. There are examples, there are explanations. It's just a wonderful resource, and I'm using one of their PowerPoints as kind of the basis of our conversation about MLA today. This is also posted in D2L. So let's kind of go ahead and get started. I know some of you are coming from backgrounds where you've learned about MLA, or some of you, you've learned about it, but it's been a while. And for some of you, this may be a lot of new information, but know that, again, we have all these materials posted on D2L, and all of the tutors that we work with at North Harris know about MLA. So should you ever need additional assistance when you're working on revising your drafts, they can help you with that as well. All right, so I'm just going to pull up the PowerPoint and walk you through some details. I'm not going to go through every single slide. I'm just going to go through those things that are the most relevant for us, but know that there's more information should you want to kind of address that. So this is the 8th edition of our style guide when it comes to MLA. So you may in different areas see 7th edition, 6th edition. We're currently right now in summer 2021 in the 8th edition, which does have some differences between previous versions. I know that MLA is also coming out with a new edition, which is frustrating for you as well as me, because some things will change in terms of how to properly format according to MLA, which is the Modern Language Association. So, I mean, what the heck is MLA, right? So, it is an organization, right, that essentially is in charge of styling when it comes to more humanities-based writing. So if you're taking something like a history class, they typically lean towards APA or American Psychological Association guidelines or Chicago style. These are all just ways that in academic writing, we can ensure that we are giving credit for other people's words and ideas. We can ensure that our readers understand that we are using research and we're following a particular method. If we didn't have a formatting style, our papers would all look so crazy and different, and it would be hard for me as an instructor to not only go through and grade, but it would be hard for you as a student to kind of know where information is supposed to appear. It's just, it would be crazy. So formatting styles give us some kind of direction. And in English-based classes, we use Modern Language Association, okay? So MLA is the organization that generally kind of regulates what our documents look like, right? So double space, Times New Roman, you know, all of that kind of stuff, in addition to in-text citations, which just means using quotes or paraphrasing the works of others in our writing, and then a works cited list, right? So we, you know, in our in-text citations mention authors, page numbers, but then what do we do with that? Like, where does that information actually appear? That's where the works cited list comes in. So I want you to imagine you're writing a 10-page paper and you're required to have 5 different sources. We need some organization to that, right? Because if you mention Irvin and What is Academic Writing, his article on page 2, I have his last name and a page number, but I don't know what that means, right? Where is this information found? Like, where does this quote appear? That's why the last page of MLA formatted documents will always be your works cited page, and that's where the whole of Irvin's information will appear. His last name, comma, first name, the title of the article, where the article is located, where it's published, right? On what date was it published? So that's all in order to help your audience know exactly where to locate the quote that you shared on page 2, okay? So I'm trying to make sense of something that seems kind of nonsensical at first, right? So not only how our document looks, but how we utilize research is what MLA is kind of in charge of. One really important thing to consider when we're thinking about writing in academia is that you always want to follow your instructor's guidelines. So in the past, I've had former students come back and say, well, this instructor wants a title page. They follow MLA formatting, but you never asked for a title page. So title pages aren't used in MLA anymore. They haven't been used for some time, but you may come across professors who still want that kind of thing. So it's really important for you as a student to know that it is absolutely your right to ask your instructor questions. What do they specifically want, right? If they say they want MLA guidelines, it's okay to then say, well, do you want a title page? You know, if they have not given you a handout that specifies everything, you know, they want and the formatting they want, ask those questions. My hope is that every instructor you meet in your academic career gives you some sort of rubric or handout. But the reality is that that just doesn't happen often enough. So when it comes to our class, I give you those handouts, but you still may have questions, and that's perfectly all right. Ask those questions. It's okay. But definitely in your other classes, if you have writing assignments, make sure that you know exactly what your instructors want, because they may say they're following a particular kind of formatting, but want something very specific. So in general, an MLA paper is on 8.5 by 11. That's just typical paper size that you put in a printer, right? Everything is double spaced. Everything from top to bottom is double spaced. And use 12-point font. I put Times New Roman because that's what I want. Like I'm specifying here, I want you to use Times New Roman. It's just the easiest thing for me to read, especially on a screen. MLA is, you know, Times New Roman or something similar, but you don't want to use something like Arial or Courier New, which makes your papers seem longer than they really are. But Times New Roman is what I want. Know that Microsoft Word defaults to like Calibri as a font. Some professors are going to be okay with that. I hate the way Calibri looks, so my preference is for you to change it to Times New Roman. But also know that Microsoft Word defaults to some weird spacing things. So Microsoft Word, when you open it, you have to do a couple of things to make sure that it's set up in MLA format. But that's why I give you templates, because I've set up and corrected all of those weird things that Microsoft Word does. Okay, leave only one space after punctuation. None of your professors should be checking this. Like it should just be 1 or 2 spaces depending on, it used to be double space after you hit like a period, but word processing programs like Microsoft Word now, they adjust accordingly. So you only really need 1 space after punctuation, but I don't care if you use 2. All margins should be set to 1 inch. Again, not all versions of Microsoft Word does this, so it's weird. Indent the first line of paragraphs 1/2 inch, which in any on any computer keyboard that you use is the tab button. The tab button should default to a 1/2 inch indentation. I have a lot of students in the past and in the present who will hit the space key a number of times to indent their paragraph. Please don't do that. It is not only is it not going to be accurate, it's too much time and effort on your part. Hit that tab key, it's on the left-hand side of your keyboard, and it should automatically indent to 1/2 inch. If your keyboard doesn't do this, then you can reach out to me and we can try to figure out the problem, but it should default to that, okay? I mean, this is how specific MLA gets, okay? So an MLA styled paper should have a header, and that's with page numbers. That's at the top of the page with your last name and your page number. And that's at the upper right-hand corner. It should use italics for titles. So growing up, when we were handwriting things for elementary, middle, even high school, we would underline the titles of something like a book or a website. No more. We don't underline anything in MLA anymore. We use italics, which is when you're kind of your font is leaning over. So just be aware of that. And you always end with a works cited page when that's required. So for like our reading responses, you don't have to do that, but for other work, you will, like our paper portfolio. So no title page is required anymore, especially because most of us submit work electronically. Title pages are kind of a throwback to when we used to print out all of our stuff. Double space everything. List your name, your instructor's name, the course, and the date in the upper left-hand corner, that is a heading, right? The header is the top right, the heading is the top left. Center the paper title. Use standard caps, no underlining, no bold, nothing like that. Create a header, again, your last name and the page number. So I'm going to show you an example of what this looks like. So this is the header, your last name and page number, and you notice that it's grayed out, which means that Microsoft Word is going to repeat that on every page, and it's going to count the pages for you. You should never ever manually enter that information at the top of your paper. Right? Like, I have a lot of students who want to type that on every single page. You shouldn't be doing that. If you go to your paper, you should be able to double click at the very top, and that's in a space where you can't just easily type because it's meant to stand off the page, and Microsoft Word will do that work for you. I have that set up in all of our templates where you just double click and add your last name. We have the student name, the name of the professor, the name of the class, and the course number. So for us it would be Engl 1301. And then it has the due date. So we put the due date instead of the date that we completed the work. I've had students in the past who want to put the date they completed the work to kind of show, like, look how early I started on my work. I mean, I appreciate it, but you want to put the due date, and you actually want to put it in this format. So the number of the day of the month, and then the month, and then the year. You can also put October 12, 2008. I mean, we're well past that. But ultimately, MLA just doesn't want like the slashes, like 08/12/. We want everything kind of clean and spelled out, right? We want everything to be as kind of formal as possible. So the date should appear in this formatting. The title of the paper is centered on the page. You'll notice that there's not extra space either. It's just, here's the heading. One space down is the title that's centered. One space down is an indent, so the tab is, and this starts the paper. MLA is super boring. That's how, there aren't extra spaces, nothing is bolded, nothing. It's boring. Your ideas are what should stand out on the page, not the font or anything, okay? So an in-text citation, so we've talked about what a paper should look like, but we need to talk about research too. It's a brief reference in your text that indicates, what source are you using. So thinking about Irvin and like Ron Finley's video, those things we're going to talk about in the future. It should direct readers to the entry in your Works Cited page. Okay, so that's why we give last names, because the last name is the first thing to appear on your Works Cited page. It should be unobtrusive. You want to provide the citation without interrupting the flow. Your audience should not have to start and stop and start and stop because of your use of quotation. So in general, the in-text citation will include the author's last name and a page number, and that's enclosed in parentheses. So here is an example. Okay, so Wordsworth stated that romantic poetry was marked by a, quote, spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. There are quotation marks. We end with a page number in parentheses, and you'll notice that the period comes after the parentheses, okay? And we use, so the last name is mentioned here, so we don't have to put that in parentheses. The second sentence is a little different. It's the same idea as in quote, but the last name was not included in the actual sentence, so we put it in the parentheses. And that's because if we scroll to the end of this paper, we need to look for Wordsworth. That's the first thing that will appear on the Works Cited page entry for the source. So that's why we use last names, because they match up with the Works Cited page, okay? So there are some other slides here that will make more sense as we kind of work through the different assignments. There's a slide on, what happens if sources don't have page numbers, okay? And I want you to just also note that there are more slides, but there is also a lot more information at the Purdue OWL website. There's a sample paper with the sample Works Cited. There are explanations for each, because you need separate entries for an electronic version of a course text, then a print version of a course text, or if you're using one page on an overall website, there are different ways that you have to reference those works, and all of that is laid out pretty well in the Purdue OWL website. So make sure you're taking a look at that. As always, Let me know if you have any questions, and good luck. Y'all are doing great.